Hello, everyone, again. I hope this finds everyone healthy and doing well. I'm doing fine. I'm getting tired of being in virus jail, but I understand the importance of it. My county, Randolph County, per capita has been hit harder than any county in the state. Um, so we're minding our P's and Q's here. Um, we want to start here with Ralph Tyler's 4 questions. These questions, Tyler did this many, many years ago, and these questions have stood the test of time in that they guide curriculum. And the first of his questions is, what shall we teach? How do you know what you're going to teach? How do you know when you're going to um, choose a curriculum? What do you do when you choose a curriculum? We just went through this with our English language arts reading curriculum at the school where I'm working with the teachers until this shutdown. And we looked at 7 different curriculum curricula in regard to reading and English language arts. Some of it I I wasn't thrilled with for various and sundry reasons. It looked good on the surface, but as I got to looking at it, knowing what I know, it raised some real red flags for me. Um, they chose to stay with the series, the curriculum, the publisher that they've been using simply because it's more familiar to them, which is fine. That's one way to choose, and then they can take it from there. But that's a big question: is what shall we teach? Do you go from the front of the book to the back of the book? With some subject matter, it's extremely important to do that. With some, not so much. But you have to know that curriculum builds on each other, on one another, and you need to look at the curriculum map, at the curriculum guide. What do they have coming to you from the grade below, or grades below you? What do they need to know when they leave you? You have to find that curriculum map or that curriculum guide in the district and make those decisions. The next question is, how shall we teach it? How are you going to teach what you're given to teach? When you walk into a classroom from at the beginning of your teaching career, you're going to walk into an empty classroom with desks or tables and chairs or whatever, and shelves full of textbooks, or in some cases with Chromebooks or iPads or something, because you're going to be one-on-one. So you have to decide how to teach it. I have already come to the conclusion that if we are, perhaps, God forbid, but if we have to do fall semester online again, I'm going to have to rewrite all my classes because my classes are not working this way. I don't like it. You don't like it. This is not, yeah, it's all got to be redone and revamped and reworked over the summer. So I'm hoping that we find out sooner rather than later what's going to happen. Then the next question he suggests is, how shall we organize it? How do you organize your instruction? How do you do that? You have to look back at your students' learning styles. You have to look to see who questions this way and who questions that way. You have to know your kids. They used to call that, and maybe they still do, being a good kid watcher. You need to be sure that you understand your students so that they can get the most from your instruction. How do you organize your instruction? What do you do? When do you do hands-on? When do you do direct instruction? When do you allow them to glean information on their own? How do you organize all of that? And his fourth question then is, how do you evaluate it? If there's no evaluative tool with your lessons, that's why it's so very important that in your lesson plans you have an assessment. You have to assess what your objective says they're supposed to do to justify teaching the lesson. A principal can come by in your classroom, or the superintendent, at any given time of a day or a week and ask you, what are you doing? Why are you teaching it this way? What standard are you hitting? And more importantly, how are you evaluating it? What is your evaluative tool? Now, that evaluative tool also goes along with your curriculum decisions. When you make curricular decisions, how are you evaluating that? How are you coming up with, we're going to use this particular textbook from this particular company? Not just because, and I made these teachers justify their choices more than just we're familiar with it. That's not good enough. I get it. I understand. I understand where they're coming from because we used to do the same thing. But how did you evaluate it based on these other ones? And what they did to evaluate these different curricula in reading language arts was they set up Google Docs, and they set up an evaluative tool on Google Docs, and they rated each one with the same questions and the same pieces, one right next to the other. So they had to really look at it and really stop and think about it. You have to evaluate your lessons, but you also have to evaluate your curriculum. And you also then in turn need to evaluate your teaching. You always, and that's where the reflection comes in. That's where the reflectiveness comes in your teaching, is how are you evaluating what you're doing? So when you have that, and it's a jumping off point, so when you design your curriculum, you have to design the curriculum to also reflect multicultural values. One of the enduring controversies in curriculum planning is how to design a curriculum that accurately reflects and honors the wide variety of cultural values represented by students in our schools and communities. How do you do that? How do you make sure that you are not offending someone? And how do you make sure that you are including everyone in that? I just saw on the news that Land O'Lakes margarine is in butter. They're changing their packaging. They have had a Native American on their packaging since, I think, since the company started producing butter and margarine. They're changing it. So there was a bill, I don't know if you're aware of this, there was a bill recently in the Illinois House, and I think it went through the Senate. I don't know if it's been signed by the governor to, sorry, just allergies, to have all the schools in the state of Illinois, if they were using Native American um, mascots, to change their mascot. Well, that would apply to us here in Steelville, because the high school are the Steelville Warriors, and the grade school, the public grade school, are the Steelville Braves. In light of everything else that's happened, I don't know where things are with that, but that's something that it goes beyond the curriculum, but it does affect the schools and the multicultural values that are reflected in your community, and in turn in the curriculum. Then one of the researchers who research a big curriculum researcher, believed that the redesigned curriculum should describe the needs and contributions of all Americans, including their struggles and hopes and dreams. We hear that a lot, especially in February during Black History Month, but there are a lot of cultures in this country. It was once called a melting pot because people came here from all different cultures, all different countries, and it shouldn't be just an add-on to the existing curriculum, but be an integral part. This is particularly seen in your face, kind of, so to speak, in the social studies and the history curriculum. And if there are those who protest the celebration of Columbus Day, and if you look at the history there, okay, well, we maybe they're right, but it's their constitutional right in this country to feel one way or the other. That may be something that you do in your social studies curriculum. Do some research on these pieces, not just on in Black History Month, but during the time of these kinds of things. I did a unit, put together a unit as a demonstration one time that surrounded pieces of World War II. And I had a piece in there for the contribution of Jewish Americans to the society. It's not just, we hear the Holocaust, the Jews were led to their deaths or to the concentration camps or whatever. What were their contributions to this country? And there are lots of them. So we have to recognize and we have to honor all societies and all ethnicities. To develop a multicultural curriculum for your classroom, regardless of the subject you teach, you need to plan learning experiences that reflect the concerns of the diverse cultural group that make up the class, using questions such as who am I, where have I been, what do I hope for. You need to do some family heritage. See if your kids can do a timeline of their family or a lineage if your curriculum lends itself to that. Some of us are old enough now to remember when we had in grade school with our reading books, sorry, with that all of our reading books, the old Dick and Jane and Jack and Janet and you had Tip and Sally and whatever, it was all middle class white, but dad went to work in a suit and tie. Mom was home just like June Cleaver in Leave It to Beaver in a dress and pearls, cleaning the house or whatever. They had one boy and one girl. They had one cat and one dog. That wasn't my house. I never thought about it at that time, but that wasn't how my house was. My dad worked in a machine shop. He was a tool and die maker, and he wore clothes to work, and then his work clothes to work, his steel toe shoes, and he wore his coveralls, and he would come home smelling like grease. And mom mom stayed home until all three of us were in school, and then she was a secretary. She didn't clean the house, and she cleaned the house a lot. She didn't clean the house in pearls and a dress. But that was the stereotype in that particular curriculum at the time, and it's still that way to some degree. You need to encourage children to share their different perspectives and opinions. To do that, you have to have a risk-free environment in your classroom. Your students need to know that they are not going to be criticized, they're not going to be critiqued, they're not going to be bullied for sharing their opinions. Now, in order to do that, they have to have rationale for it, though. You need to make sure that you are getting them deeper than just, well, I think this. What makes you think that? Where do you get that from? How do you know that? Show them that you value the different ways they solve problems and view the world around them, but you need to make them justify. They don't just spout off a reaction without some justification. You need to dig down and find out what they're thinking. You need to get into their head a bit. There's a recommendation by Reisman that as you assign learning tasks, you think about how the assignment can be used to strengthen intergroup understandings and respect for each other's cultures, and the development of skills that will later be needed in community, national, and global citizenship. Let's face it, we are a global society. We have to teach our kids and train our kids and educate our kids now to work in a global society. In the advent of all this social media and the technology that's out there, our students have to be able to not only work in an office in St. Louis, they need to be able to communicate and work with people from all over the world. They can't just we can no longer just isolate ourselves into our United States values, Southern Illinois values, whatever. We have to be able to be global ambassadors, and we have to teach our kids how to do that. And we're going to stop right here because I'm running up against the clock again. So I want you to stay safe. I want you to stay healthy, please, and thank you very much. I miss everybody terribly. I just, this is awful. And wash your hands and keep using your hand sanitizer. And I will talk to you in a little while again.